And let's just start with the state of play in D.C. and then move on to what happened overnight with China. How significant are these comments?
Well, I think the world is watching to see how this transition goes. I mean, it's been over a week now since the election. Like you say, we had those comments overnight from the Texas senator on the GOP side making the point that the president-elect should get these classified briefings, but other key players in the Republican Party have yet to recognize Mr. Biden's win. And of course, you know, President Trump himself continues to make those unsubstantiated claims about vote fraud, and he's continued to contest it. And all of this is happening, by the way, while global leaders, especially here in Asia, are recognizing Vice President Biden's win. I mean, this week alone, we had telephone calls between the leaders of Japan, South Korea, and Australia with the president-elect. So while these GOP lawmakers are slow to come on side, I think the rest of the world is watching and waiting to see just how this transition goes, and I think to see if it goes as smoothly as they expect it to and as previous transitions have gone.
What does Beijing make of this transition and Xi Jinping?
Well, I think they're somewhat lying low at the moment. They haven't made any explicit comment on the U.S. election, but we do know that it appears as though the current U.S. administration isn't finished its business with China yet. As you mentioned earlier, we saw the new executive order on prohibiting investment firms and pension funds from the U.S. investing in 20 Chinese companies that are designated as having Chinese military ties. So I think that speaks to the idea that President Trump and his hawkish strategy towards China isn't over yet. He's still in office until January 20th, so China is probably going to lie somewhat low until President-elect Biden takes office. They certainly won't want to stoke those tensions, but I think that the coming weeks and months before the transition does happen will certainly be a jittery time for U.S.-China relations.
Yeah, and Chinese equities this morning down more than 1.5% after this executive order. I mean, Enda, as you say, Xi Jinping, Beijing, probably likely trying to take a little bit of a lower profile given this transition. What more can the U.S. do?
Well, certainly at the very least, China will not want to stoke tensions between the handover. They will want to ride out President Trump's final few months in office. They don't want to start another whirlwind of trade tariffs and anything that stokes up the trade war again. But there's plenty that the U.S. can do in terms of further executive orders, in terms of sanctions against individual Chinese officials or against Chinese companies or banks. Remember, the U.S. is pushing through its vows to punish Beijing over the coronavirus pandemic, over treatment of Muslim minorities, and the crackdown in Hong Kong. So there's plenty on President Trump's slate when it comes to China. But as I say, China has some cards up its sleeve as well. It could respond with, negative treatment of U.S. firms operating in China. But the broad feeling in this part of the world is that China will want to just ride out the next few weeks and months and see then what kind of a reset there will be with President Biden. We know that there's cross-party consensus now in the U.S. for a tougher approach to China, but I suspect at the very least China might be hoping for some time out to start fresh with President Biden.